Hello class, welcome to lesson 2.8, which is all about literal equations and dimensional analysis. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve equations for given variables, and you should be able to use formulas to solve real-world problems. So let's look at our two vocab terms for this section. The first one is literal equation. A literal equation is a formula or equation that involves several variables. So a formula or equation that involves several variables. Okay? So if we had 2a plus 3b equals c, that would be an example of a literal equation. Dimensional analysis also goes by the name of unit analysis. Okay, so dimensional analysis and unit analysis are the same things. And what it is, it's the process. It's a process of carrying units throughout a computation. And a quick example of that would be converting, let's see, miles per hour. So you have your miles and you have your hours. So if you wanted to convert that to feet per second, that would be an example. You change your miles to feet and your hours to seconds. Okay? That would be an example of dimensional analysis. Okay, let's take a look at our first example. We want to solve each equation for the variable indicated. So if we look at our first one, we have 15 equals 3n plus 6p. We want to solve for n. Okay? So the way that we're going to do that, we're going to start by teeing it up just like we were before, because we want to get n by itself. So that means let's move what's with our n. Let's move the 6p. Here on the right hand side of the equation we are adding 6p, so to undo that we are going to subtract 6p from both sides. So we are left with 15 minus 6p on the left hand side, and we have 3n on the right hand side. And then I'm just going to rewrite that quick. If we want to get n all the way by itself, can tee it up, and our last step, we have 3n. I'm not saying any operations. That means multiplication is indicated or implied. So if I undo my multiplication with some division, we should be fine. So on the right hand side, we have an n. And remember, we are dividing this whole left-hand side by 3. That means I'm dividing the 15 by 3, and I'm dividing the 6p by 3. So 15 divided by 3 is 5, minus, what's negative 6p divided by 3? That becomes 2p. Okay, so 5 minus 2p equals n. And that is as far as we can go for our answer. If you had left it like this, I would also accept that answer, okay? Either one works, it's the same thing. All right, let's look at our second example, or second part of this problem. If we want to solve k minus 2 over 5 equals 11j, we want to solve for k. That means we need to get k by itself. The way that we start is you can see k is being divided by 5. So in order to undo that division, we are going to multiply both sides by 5. I'm left with k minus 2 on the left-hand side, and then 55j. Tee it up again because my k is still not by itself. How do I get k by itself? I have to add 2 to both sides. I'm left with k equals 55j plus 2. I'm sorry, my handwriting's really messy this time. There's something goofy going on with my smartboard today, so bear with me. But go ahead and try this example on your own and see how you do. Hopefully for this one you ended up with y equals 2x minus 13 divided by 17. If not, be sure to ask for some help, whether from me or a friend. Let's look at our second example. We want to solve each equation for the variable indicated. So the first example, our variable was on one side of the equation. This time, if you look, we're solving for d, and we have a d on both sides, okay? I'm just going to write this one over here. And if I want to solve this, again, start by teeing it up. And if I want d on one side of the equation, that means I have to move one of my d's. I'm going to move the d from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So I'm left with 5c equals 3d minus 1d is 2d minus 1. Alright, let's move the 1 so it's just 2d on the right-hand side. So instead of minus 1, I'm going to add 1. I have 5c plus 1 equals 2d. Next step, in order to get d by itself, 2d, I have to divide by 2. Alright, so now I'm left with d equals, is 5 easily divisible by 2? Yes and no. It leaves us with a decimal. So I'm going to write this as 5c plus 1 all over 2. And that is my answer. Let's look at our next problem. We have 6q minus 18 equals qr plus t. We want to solve for q. So again, this one's a little bit trickier. You can see we have a q on both sides of the equation. And in order to solve this one, what we can do is we can move the q's to one side of the equation. So I'm going to move the qr to the left-hand side. So now I have 6q minus qr minus 18 equals t. Then I'm going to leave the 6q and the qr. And I'm going to add 18 to both sides. So that way I have the q's on the left-hand side and everything else on the right-hand side. Here's where it gets a little tricky. You can see both these terms have a q in common, but the first one doesn't have an r, and the second one does. So what we're going to do is we are going to pull a q out. So if I divide 6q by q, I have a 6, and then qr divided by q just leaves me with an r. And if you don't trust that, you can always check with the distributive property. If I distribute that q, I have 6q minus qr. Okay? So I know it works. Let's keep solving this problem. So I have q times the quantity of 6 minus r. Tee it up. How do I get q by itself? I have q times something, so I'm going to divide by that whole quantity. Oops, 6 minus r, sorry. Wow, my pens are really weird today. Alright, so now I'm left with q equals, then I have a t plus 18 divided by 6 minus r. And that is my final answer. I know it looks a little funny, but that is the process. Always, if you're stuck on how to do this, always look for common items like we did with the q's and pull them out. Okay, see if you can do something there. Try this one on your own and see how you do. Hopefully for this first one, you ended up with a equals the quantity of 6 minus 3c divided by the quantity of 12 minus 2b, and you said that b cannot equal 6. If you got that wrong or have any questions, be sure to ask for some help, okay? Let's look at example 3. The formula for the volume of a rectangular prism is volume equals length times width times height, where L is the length, W is the width, and H is the height. Solve the formula for W. Okay, so we have V equals length, width, height. Everything on the right-hand side is being multiplied because we know that because there's no operation symbols written. So that means to get W by itself, we can divide by both L and H. Okay, so then we're left with V over LH, or V divided by LH, equals W. And that's what it looks like to solve for a variable in a formula. It looks a little weird at times, but then the really awesome part is usually this is a two-part problem. First you solve for a variable, and then part B of the problem usually gives you numbers to plug into your equation. So if we want to find the width of a rectangular prism that has a volume of 79.04 cubic centimeters, a length of 5.2, so my length was on the bottom, so 5.2, and a height of 4. So you can see it's already solved for W, so we can figure out what is that width. If we divide 79.04 divided by 5.2 times 4, you end up with 3.8 centimeters. If you did not get that answer, you might have plugged it into your calculator incorrectly. Remember, you need to multiply these together first before and get a number so you can divide 79.04 by that number, okay? If you plugged it in 79.04 and then you hit the slash and you did 5.2 times 4, it's going to divide this before it multiplies the second half. And that's one danger of using a calculator, okay? So make sure you did the bottom, you multiplied 5.2 times 4, and then you divided 79.04 by that number. Okay, go ahead and try this one on your own, see how you do. Hopefully you ended up with G equals M over E, and then go ahead, keep that, and try this next one, see how you do. Alright, hopefully you ended up with 77.74 gallons. If not, be sure to ask for help, whether you struggled with the first part, the second part, or both parts of this question. Be sure to reach out for help, okay? Example 4 is our last example for the day. A car travels a distance of 100 feet in about 2.8 seconds. What is the velocity of the car in miles per hour? Round to the nearest whole number. So we are going from feet per second to miles per hour. The reason I do this is so I can see what units I'm converting. I'm not going to I convert distance to distance, so feet to miles. I'm not going to convert feet to hours, right? So that's why I put them on the same level. So feet to miles. How many feet are in a mile? 5,280 feet are in a mile, okay? And how many seconds are in an hour? Okay, well that can be a little trickier to convert, but let's deal with that as it comes, okay? So we start with the given information is that we can go 100 feet. So we have 100 feet in 2.8 seconds, right? Let's start by converting our time, okay? So we know we want to go from seconds to hours, so we can either go from seconds straight to hours, or we can do seconds to minutes to hours. So I'm going to do seconds to minutes, so 1 minute. The reason you want your seconds to be diagonal is when you have the same label that and they're diagonal from each other, they cancel. So now we're left with minutes. Okay? So now if I do 60 minutes, my minutes cancel, and 60 minutes is 1 hour. So I'm left with the label hours on the bottom, right? Now, I want to cancel my feet. I have feet up top over here, so that means I need feet on the bottom, and I want miles on the top. So 5,280 feet equals 1 mile. Now that I have feet in two locations, they cancel. We are left with hours, which we want, and miles, which we want. So all we have to do is multiply across. So if we multiply across, we are left with 360,000 over 14,784. And if we divide that, we end up with our nearest whole number is 24, or about 24 miles per hour. Okay? Go ahead and try this last example on your own and see how you do. Hopefully you ended up with about 4.35 miles. If not, be sure to ask for help. If you have any questions on anything that I covered in today's video, be sure to either email me, reach out to a friend, reach out to me, come see me before or after school. You know, so many different options. Make sure you are taking charge of your learning and ask for help. Have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.